Hello and welcome to All About Billings. We are a show dedicated to discovering the people that make Billings a great place to work and live. We will interview local business people, community leaders, artists, entertainers, and we will learn from them all about their successes, their failures, and their connection to Billings. I'm your host, Nancy Brook, broker and owner at Billings Best Real Estate. And today it is my pleasure to have as my guest, Aimee Carlson. Now, Aimee is the founder of SheForce, which is all about coaching, consulting, and retreats. Plus, she has a podcast, which is a very empowering look at life and how we can discover our vitality and just live more powerfully as people. So welcome to the show, Aimee.
Thanks, Nancy.
It's so wonderful to have you here.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So why don't you just start by telling me a little bit more about SheForce and how did you get started?
Sure. So it kind of goes way back. Since I do the life coaching, I got my life coaching certificate back in 2001. And I fell in love with life coaching, but I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it in Montana at the time.
Right.
And so I just played around with it, kind of using it as in my parenting, and I was a teacher at the time. And
Okay.
I loved the way that it's just about asking questions and helping people kind of come to their own answers. But it wasn't until pandemic time that I decided, since everything else is kind of in chaos, why not kick off my business in a time that I also knew it was really needed, that people were, during that chaotic time, just asking all of these questions about themselves, what they want to do. Of course, we were all wondering, like, stability, or our idea of it, is gone. So that's when I kicked off my business, right in the middle of all of that.
Well, what took you 19 years? Because you had your certificate in 2001, right?
Great question. I think it was confidence, and this is part of what I work with people on now, too,
Right.
is I had a certain level of comfort knowing, like I said, I'd been a teacher, and then I worked in health promotion too. Always knowing that I was going to start my own business at some point, but there's that fear. That fear of the unknown, that fear of letting go of what's comfortable.
So you were teaching still.
Yeah.
So obviously you didn't want to let go of that job, and I guess that's stability.
Yeah. But, that point we come to, that kind of crossroads we come to where something is calling us forward so strongly we can't ignore it anymore. That's where it was getting for me. And
so what is that like? What do you mean when it's calling you? What was it about this that drew you in?
yeah, so, I've always loved teaching, working with adults that were in some kind of transition, that were looking for, I believe we all know, we've got the answers within us. So that is not up to me, but to be in a supportive setting that really helps us lean into that, and kind of, it's almost like a practice space where you get to try something out. When you come to a coaching session, you get to try out that new identity that you are wanting to move towards. And so, to get back to your question, with that sort of pull that was happening for me, I knew that I could either stay in this comfortable space that was not really, I could grow, but it wasn't pushing me in the way that I knew entrepreneurship would for sure. being kind of taking on that risk. I was ready for this big challenge, and I just couldn't ignore it anymore.
So you just almost felt this internal calling that this was what you were here to do.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with teaching.
Right.
And that there's a part of it that probably fit you,
Yeah.
but it wasn't quite all-encompassing as you needed it.
Right. And it led to, what the next step was, but there was a next step.
So why don't you share a little bit about what life coaching is? I know
Sure.
it's more common than it was maybe 10, even 20 years ago. A lot of times people will want a counselor, but a life coach is a little different than a counselor.
Yeah.
So maybe explain to us how it works.
It's a great question. So going to a counselor is more about, this is just kind of in a nutshell, more about working with things in the past and working through some of those things. And with coaching, it's more about what's ahead. And so it has a lot to do with goal setting, achievement, performance, accountability in that next phase.
But you're not necessarily a career coach. It's all-encompassing.
Right.
So what do people come to you with? What kinds of situations, issues, concerns would somebody hire you to help them address?
Sure. So usually, kind of like what got me to move into this next phase for myself, there's something that has gotten so uncomfortable that we're ready to deal with it. So usually we don't just jump out of our comfort zone on our own. We need that little bit of restlessness, that itch, that kind of feeling stuck. And so the types of things that people have come to me to work with, and I will say, usually what we go in thinking it's about is actually not exactly what we land working on. But people come to me for, sometimes it's career things. And in this time of midlife, which can be a whole range of ages
We
and
all
stages.
are going to live to 150
That's
now,
right?
right? So 75
That's
could be
right.
midlife.
It could be midlife at that point, for sure. And it's reaching this place where what had been working just isn't working anymore, or it's not satisfying anymore. Or so some people come when they are empty nesting, and all of a sudden, what is life now? Some people come when they are feeling a career shift, or maybe they want to start their own business. What does that look like? Some people come when I've had a few people lately that they're in this transition that they've got an elderly parent that they're taking care of, or that elderly parent has recently died and they are stepping into this new role in their family of becoming the matriarch, basically. And so during these times of transition and looking for a little extra support, looking for a little extra clarity around that, looking for, a lot of times we're not always surrounded with people who have done these things that we are being drawn towards.
Well, I think the other thing that's interesting about people is sometimes there's no motivation to make a change.
Yeah.
Like if you think about it, you as a teacher, you have your consistent job, you have your salary, you have your benefits, your family or your friends know what it is that you do. Nobody's pushing you to do more, to do differently, to make yourself totally fulfilled.
Yeah.
It's like everybody supports the status quo. And it's not even that they wish ill for you.
Right.
It's part of it. So it's really hard to get support and encouragement sometimes from those people who are closest to us in our lives.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I would imagine that's a big factor in somebody reaching out to a neutral party
Yeah.
who can help guide them towards a new life.
You bring up such a good point. Making that decision to leave that comfortable place,
Right.
or even tell somebody about it, or even, make a decision. I was just talking with a client this morning about her journey with her health and her weight loss, and how even at this point, a few months into it and a certain number of pounds lighter, she still doesn't talk too much about it with some people because they have their own fears that might come up around that, or their own self-judgments. Usually we don't mean to judge the other person, but
That's a good example, because I'm in weightlifting groups, and there's some people who's like, well, I lost 50 pounds and now my family is saying I'm looking too skinny. And she posts a photo, it's like, no, you look good, you look healthy. And I'm sure the family isn't deliberately trying to sabotage her. Maybe they think they're being supportive, but it's so odd to me how the people closest to us can throw rain on our parade.
Yeah, fear of change. What does this mean for me?
Yeah.
So that, I love your question and your reflection about that very thing, that usually that is why we're looking for someone outside of us to kind of help kickstart the process that we do know is the next thing for us.
Well, and sometimes it's also hard to see your blind spots. So that's the other problem that I've encountered, other people I know have encountered. You almost need that outside person to see you truly. Just like I'm telling you about these people in the weightlifting groups can comment, no, you look good. So they don't have any agenda. They're just telling you what they think. And sometimes it's like, oh, I notice you're a really good communicator. Or I notice you're really well put together. Or you seem to be passionate about children. So sometimes is it just helping them discover what it is? Because maybe they're lost? Yeah.
And the things that we, a lot of times we've done some of these inquiries, or they were done with us in school, for example, like in high school. What direction should you go with your career? And there's some of these assessments, and maybe in college there's some other assessments. And then maybe we don't do any of those again for a few decades, and we've changed.
Right.
But we still have this thought that we need to be that same person, or we need to continue on that path that we started 20 years ago, without giving ourselves the time to say, oh, who am I now? With all of this life experience, what's my desire now?
Right.
What am I good at now?
So how do you help people start discovering that? Because I know you said the wisdom is from within. So what does that look like? So I'm here, I'm a little lost. How do you begin when you're coaching somebody?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that I start with is to just, share like a vision with me. And it can be about any part of your life, something that you want to do someday. Maybe it's travel, maybe it's, run a marathon, maybe it's start a nonprofit. So usually people can come up with at least one thing that they know is out there for them. And then from there we can kind of talk about, like, okay, what's stopping you? What's blocking you? And so that'll get the ball rolling. But sometimes, if that is like a muscle, we were talking about weightlifting earlier, like a muscle that hasn't been developed, maybe we haven't really checked in with ourselves for a while about that. So if there's nothing that comes up right away, then there can be one of the processes is just to ask people around you, what am I good at? What do you think? What do you see about me? What are my strengths? And then, have them keep a little list of what that is and just keep adding to that. The other thing when they are in a coaching session, then I can reflect what I see that they are good at as well. And then I really love some of these personality tests.
Yeah.
So
they can be insightful.
Oh my goodness. And there's some great websites. So sometimes I send people to those too and then report back with what they have found out. And then even just looking back to see like what some of the common threads are throughout their life. And I had one of my coaches said, go back through every job that you've had in your life and write down what you liked about that job and then see what the theme is with all of those things. And that's an interesting process too.
Right, especially if you think back to jobs you had when you were like maybe just right out of high school or college, and you think, wow, I don't even know how that could relate to what I'm doing now. So that's really an interesting exercise.
Yeah, that there's always something, some little nugget there that we can say, oh yeah, but I did like this one piece about it.
Right.
Yeah.
So what would you say are the things that are the most difficult to deal with in your job? So have you had anything that it's like, oh, that was so hard, and maybe that you've learned from?
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes, often, so this doesn't happen too often, because the thing about coaching that I really like is that nobody's forcing us to do it. And when I used to teach exercise classes to adults versus PE classes to students, for the exercise classes, the adults have chosen to be there.
Right. So they're not grumbling.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And same way with coming to coaching. Like, usually nobody's making you. So that is helpful. But sometimes one of the challenging things occasionally is when someone has just kind of, turned that dreaming part of them off for a while, maybe out of self-protection.
Sure.
Fear about like, what if this doesn't happen? Maybe I have this big dream, and what if it doesn't happen? What if I want this thing and I tell somebody about it and then I don't follow through? And so if there's a kind of a big barrier in that way, that can be a bit of a challenge to chip away at.
It's almost like they're wounded in their creativity.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and you had mentioned to me that you are really an advocate for people exploring their creativity. Yeah. Tell me about what you mean by that.
Cool. So one of my loves is art. Not that I'm actively doing art now, but how it expresses now is just through creativity. It could be in how I dress or how I decorate my office or a variety of things, the way I look at something in nature. But to me, creativity is like a pinnacle of self-expression and self-actualization. And I think everybody is creative. And when we tap into that, I think that's part of our flow process. So whether it's doing an art project or not, just allowing ourselves to really free flow ideas, free flow words, thoughts, and see where it all goes. And I think so often in adulthood, we think that we have to put on this more serious kind of persona.
Right.
And sometimes the way we think about that, we think creativity doesn't have a place in that. And I think that's not the case, but just like when I used to teach art, I would see this within kids. So earlier in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, even into third grade, no problem. They start to do some art project. Oh my gosh, they're filled with ideas. They're happy to share. Fourth, fifth, and sixth grade, there's this self-critical, self-judgment comparison going on. And then the creativity kind of can dip along with that. And I think a lot of us then kind of carry that into adulthood.
Well, it does make sense because it's just the old saying, color in the lines.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that kind of gets to the heart of it. And I think in society, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, we want people to conform to societal rules, which creates order. And obviously we don't need a city filled with chaos. But the downside of that is people will be a little stifled from expressing themselves too, potentially.
So just encouraging that, like a lot of times in some of my inquiry with people too, is throwing out questions that will stimulate some of that imagination or creativity or innovation, just to see, and I kind of call it part of their experiment. Like, you don't have to believe me. Experiment. See what you think about this.
Sure.
And so that kind of starts to get them into that. And I think even the use of that word experiment, if someone hasn't worked with their quote unquote creativity for a while, they're open to the idea of that scientific approach to it. And I think there's a real interesting
clever. I see what
there.
You're doing. Well, I once had a class, it was an online class, and one of the assignments was to schedule playtime every week. It seemed like so ludicrous, like I don't have time to go whatever, play on a swing set or whatever. But I see the point. It's just reinvigorating that youthful spirit, which in a sense is the creativity that we shun as we get older, or just, I don't have time for you. Well, and you've also, speaking of creative, you've started a podcast. So what inspired that? And tell us what it's about.
Sure. So in my own curiosity, I love to learn things. And now with social media and so many things accessible, you get to see what people are doing. And I just thought, I was interacting with somebody on social media who was putting together she was going to put together some kind of a streaming thing, and she was talking about how she was going to do that and how she just encouraged people to, maybe start a podcast or something along the lines of that to get in this, satisfy that curiosity, get to know and understand more about the people, the places, the things that you're interested in. And so once I started my podcast, it really tied in with my business. So, what do I do? How do I work with people? The people that I work with, who might they like to hear about? So it's not always just me talking to them about something. Maybe they want to learn from someone else. And what great way to sample that is with a little interview, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so it has just become so satisfying to me. And so I get to engage with my audience and say, what do you want to hear about next? Or what's a topic? What's does anybody know of a certain person that they would like to learn something that you want to learn about on the show? And so, in fact, we have I have a book club that reads these what I think are interesting, kind of stimulating personal growth and personal development books. For Q1, we're doing Be Your Future Self Now. And then
Great title.
Yeah, it's a fantastic book by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And so for Q2, we're doing Sacred Success. And the author was on my podcast, about a year and a half ago. And now she's going to come into the book group and do a whole Q&A with the participants. So I just think it's so fun to connect the ideas, the people, the ongoing growth, and the podcast has been a fantastic way to do that.
The other thing that's cool is, I mean, in the old days, right, and even when you started in 2001, you got your life coaching certificate. It would be pretty hard to develop a business outside of your local area.
Right.
Maybe if somebody knew you through a relative or something, you could get, but now the world is available. Are you seeing people from other parts of the country?
Yeah.
That are part of your audience?
I am, and I've got, I've had a client in South Africa.
Wow.
And, we've got, people that, whether they're on the email list or listen to the podcast from all over, and, being able to work with clients that are in any location on the globe. It's really fun and fascinating, and keeps me in that growth mindset.
Right.
Like just thinking about meeting with somebody on Zoom, they're in a whole different location, whole different time zone, whole different weather, culture, government.
Right.
And it really keeps my mind open in that way, which I enjoy that.
Well, and I want to make sure that people know how they can get in touch with you. So you're local here in Billings.
Yes.
So people could meet with you in person here.
They could.
But you do Zoom.
Yes.
And so how do people get a hold of you?
Sure. So my website is www.sheforcecoach.com.
Okay. SheForceCoach.com. Okay.
Yep. And then they might also find me on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram. I would love to connect, and if anybody wants to hop into that book club next quarter and get to meet the author.
Yeah. And so you do that through the podcast? Is that how you connect on that book club?
So through the podcast, through social media, through the email list.
Okay. Terrific.
Yeah.
Well, I might jump on in
that
as
would
well.
Be great.
It sounds like a fascinating book.
It's very good.
Well, Aimee, you have just been such a delight to get to know. It's been my honor to meet you today and hear all about how you're trying to make the world a better place, one person at a time, helping them achieve their dreams, rediscover their creativity, and just live the best life they can. Amazing.
Thank you.
Good work.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And everybody, thank you so much for watching our show, and we hope to see you next time on All About Billings.